Today's episode is brought to you by the Hippocratic Collective. Check out our shows and join the conversation at thehippocratic-collective.com. Hello, I'm Joan. I'm a Canadian family physician who also works as a restorative medical educator, facilitator, and coach. I create spaces that rehumanize the work of healthcare. I'm creating this podcast to remind myself, as well as anyone else working in a helping profession, that when you are working and caring for your human patients, you are the other human in the room. Before we jump into this week's episode, I want to remind you that Creating Space, my coaching course and retreat, is open for registration and enrollment now. I am so excited that folks are signing up for spending 6 months with me online and then 4 days with me in person at a spa retreat later on this year. And I want you to be in there. So head to joanchanmd.com/space and book a call with me. You get to chat with me by phone, learn if this program is right for you. So head to joanchanmd.com/space. I can't wait to talk to you and invite you into Creating Space. Okay, fine. Hello there, healthcare humans. Thank you so much for coming back for another episode of The Other Human in the Room. I'm really looking forward to catching up with this particular healthcare human and getting to know her more because I've had the pleasure of being in her home and singing songs on her back porch, as well as, being in spaces where singing was happening, which is something that we might decide to talk about. But I don't know you that well yet, Anne. And so I'm really looking forward to spending this hour together, just like getting to know another human in healthcare. So would you like to introduce yourself to those that are listening?
Yes, Joan, I so respect what you're doing with this podcast. I also respect that you were willing to play ukulele with us randomly, at that open mic at the Voices Rock Medicine Retreat last year, and also because you had just taken up ukulele. I have been accompanying on piano for decades, and even I get nervous, and I'm like, Joan is so super brave. I already loved you immensely. I didn't even know you had a podcast then.
Oh, that's so fun.
Yeah, I think it's so cool. You're obviously one of those women, like many of the women in the Voices Rock community, who acknowledge that they're multidimensional beyond being a doctor and having caregiving roles, whether that's as a mom, wife, daughter, and just willing to step outside the mold of what medicine and society says, a female doctor should be. So I'm an ER physician in Toronto. And I'm a bit of I don't know if we're allowed to say freak of nature anymore. I think freakish is okay, right? Freakish or freaky is, but whatever.
You can claim whatever you want.
Yeah. I'm also a creative type. So I'm a small-time musician and I'm trying to make it as a writer. I have an agent and I'm trying to find a home for a book that I have written. It's a hybrid memoir, which means that I combine my personal story with about 10 cases from the ER that help me shed what I like to call the shame of my origins, which involves, and I was hoping we could get into it a little bit because I've listened to some of your episodes where, there was a recent episode about where you talk about religion.
Yes.
So part of it is my deconversion from a fundamentalist Pentecostal faith, as well as accepting my parents of origin who, my sister and I had a bit of an unconventional childhood due to my mom having a severe, it's gone between schizophrenia and schizoaffective disorder. We were on welfare. We used the food bank. And I spent time in foster care when Child Protection Services apprehended us. And against all odds, I put myself through med school at University of Alberta, and I even did a Harvard fellowship just to make myself feel better about my origins. And now I'm a assistant professor at University of Toronto. I have 2 young girls, but I think all of us in medicine, we see so much hardship and people going through things that we can say are verifiably, I don't think we mean to compare our trauma. And I don't like to use the T word. We call it trauma. Even in the publishing industry, they're kind of over the T word also. There's been so many trauma memoirs. And we won't get into that, or we can later. But I think, statistics say we all go through something like 5 to 14 significant emotional losses over our life. So it's not just, I know a lot of the things I've been through, people are like, oh, that's so hard you went through that. And I'm like, no, you know what? Everybody goes through some, we won't say the SHIT word in case my children listen later. I don't know if you've heard that saying, but you're like, from the manure comes the flowers. And I think, and I think as healthcare people, we know that like it's impossible to get through this life without something really like grief-stricken happening to us. Like it's just not possible.
Yeah.
And I think we have a unique window into other people's lives that sometimes we don't actually let ourselves process and grieve and feel badly for what's happened to us. And I definitely was one of those people. Like, I'm like, you know, like I was in foster care and like my dad had assaulted me and like all this stuff, whatever. But like, you know, he only assaulted me one time. And like, you know, and like, you know, other people, even I had friends I went to med school with, it was like a repeated pattern. And so I was always like, oh, I'm never going to call myself a survivor. Like I never used that word survivor. I didn't like that term. But I did this speech recently as part of trying to, you know, I'm kind of newer to social medias, socials and stuff like that. But I decided that I would put up this speech that I did at a domestic violence fundraiser in Toronto. And I did not use ChatGPT to write the speech. I wrote the speech. However, when I went to like put it up on YouTube, it was like, ER doctor and survivor. And I'm like, oh, and my agent's like, that's a really great way to brand yourself. You know, there's nobody with that brand. I'm like, okay, you know, I guess that's going to be my brand or whatever. So now I'm using that term survivor and I'm on the other, and I don't know if that's why the speech ended up going viral. I really don't know. But like, I'm just kind of unpacking what that means. I would say that all of us who work in healthcare, you know, even the shift I work, Monday, summer emerge shift, where everything's closed, we were all talking about surviving the shift. And I was like, honestly, like that is an appropriate use of that word for me, because that is how that shift, like you just feel so bad every single patient you see. Like that they waited sick, like I don't even want to say what the wait times are now, Monday, summer emerge. It's you just apology, like every single patient, you're like, I'm so sorry you waited, you know. And so all of that to say, I think because we see so much suffering in our work, and it's hard to give yourself permission. And that's what I want to talk about today. The main thing was, you know, giving yourself permission to process things that you've gone through, to spend, you know, time, energy, money, invest resources in yourself, in your own healing, in your own creative process. And I think it's very hard for us to do. And that's part of why I love every episode. I haven't had a chance to listen to all of the episodes, but like I love every single episode and everything you're trying to do here, because I think the more we can embrace our own humanity, that we've all had, you know, our own unique loss pattern. And of course, it's not going to ever be as bad as every single thing we have seen in the health. Like, you know, even like I had somebody my age who was dying of metastatic cancer. And I'm like, how can I feel bad about like still stuff from my childhood? Like now when I'm like perfectly healthy and my children are healthy and like I have money now. And so like, you know, I can't have permission to like spend time like processing that, or spend time kind of doing something frivolous. That's the other thing that I really want to highlight today, or I feel like I could help others with in our profession, is that I took time to do some what I considered at first frivolous things, like the music.
Yeah.
So like joining the choir, going full circle back to like how we met through the Voices Rock community. That felt so frivolous at first. And the only reason I allowed myself to join that choir is because they were raising money in their first concert for the children of Alana Frick. And because there's domestic violence in my family, I was like, oh, I'm allowed to sing at this because we're going to raise money. So like, I don't think I would have let myself join that if it wasn't like there is an actual like purpose. Like I can actually write on paper, like we are going to achieve this. Everything has to be like, there's something I'm achieving, or there's something. Now, some of that is not just the imprinting of medicine and medical culture. I think some of that is my own issues of workaholism, perfectionism that I'm working through. Growing up in a fundamentalist Pentecostal religion, you kind of learned, it was an amazing community. Like, I love that community. I almost wish my kids could be raised in that community because it was intergenerational. It was reflective. I think praying and the meditative aspects of prayer and gratitude, there's all of this stuff that was so rich and meaningful. At the same time, some of it's harmful to look at the world, and all I would see when I met people, I wouldn't notice like their gender, their origins. I was just like, are they born again or not? Like that was just, my mind was just like, are you born again? Are you going to heaven or are you going to hell? And that was like the number one. My mind was, I don't want to use the word brainwash, but I did just say that. Like it's kind of like you have this neural pathway that's like, this is how we see things. And that's the number one most important thing in life. And that's above everything else. And interestingly, I think in medicine, and I'm still trying to figure this out in the Substack. Yeah, follow my Substack. That's why I'm here. I'm trying to get people to, like everybody, whatever. I've just started the Substack because I'm trying to figure out, I think there's parallels between what I experienced in the institution of my religion and in the institution of medicine. Yeah. Which is, I do think in general, it's there. We all know there's archaic aspects to what we do. Like, we're the only industry that faxes. We still page, things like that, right? We won't get it. I'm no expert on. I'm not going to get into that. But I think that the lack of kind of creativity in or willingness to, there's only a certain way we do medicine, right? It's like, this is the hierarchy. This is the way the system works. And we all know, like, it could be better, but it would be too hard or too impossible for us to change X, Y, Z. So we'll just stick with it. And so I'm seeing those parallels, and I'm trying to figure out, what is the right way to use our voices and speak up. And so that's why I've titled this Substack Rise After Silence, because I was silent about stuff in my family for decades. And I realized that being silent about, the healthcare system and how we could better help people who experience what I call private violence, which I know is not a term people use a lot. The reason I use that term is it encompasses, domestic violence, gender-based violence, sexual assault, household violence, just anything where it's not in the public purview. And I think, there's a big connection between, aggression that happens in the home and in society. And I think even if that's nothing, you've never personally experienced, aggression or violence in an intimate setting, we all want to see more peaceful societies. And I think in emergency department, we're witnessing private and public violence a lot. So it's become kind of an because of my personal experience and experience as a female ER doc, this is kind of my advocacy area. I work with this organization called End Violence Everywhere. We're looking at actually starting a peer program in the emergency department, similar to what they had for addictions, that, if you come in and you have experienced violence, we can connect you with people. So anyways, I'm going all over the place. I feel like you got to interrupt me and ask whatever questions, because I could just keep talking in circles about all the stuff I'm doing.
I really wanted to let you go.
Forever?
No, because I really wanted, I mean, you as well are very much a multidimensional human being, which actually, like, everybody is. But one thing I love about you, Anne, is that you are expressing those different parts of yourself. So I wanted to give you some space to share those different parts of yourself, because, like, how could those be captured in a 3-line bio, So I'm so glad you gave people. I know, it wasn't really a bio.
It was like, here's a bunch of stuff I'm doing now.
No, it was perfect.
And stuff I did in the past. And I hope you resonate
real.
with some of it.
Yes.
There you go.
I would love to start, like, really having that through line of what it takes to give yourself permission to do what lights you up, what you actually want to do, what helps you feel more human. You could say all of those things, knowing that that is what, in my experience and opinion, ends up helping to, like, heal you and therefore make you a more effective healer for others, So I would love to start back on the fundamentalist religion part, because I resonate completely with what you're saying. Like, the word I often use is dogma, which is like a religious kind of word. So, like, it's funny. So you grew up Pentecostal, and I grew up, I guess, like, just like non-denominational evangelical Christian, though technically there was a domination, but it was like, basically there was no tambourines, there was no speaking in tongues. And I'm not saying those are the only things that can happen at Pentecostal
I spoke in
church,
tongues.
right? That's the delineator, right? And I'm like kind of bummed about it, to be honest. But we had a rock band. So
great.
So we were like, there was a traditional service with just hymns, but then there was the contemporary service. So that was my flavor of evangelical Christianity. But what you just said about like having like the number one mission of your life being God focused and just having your neural pathways really primed to be, you have to, even all of your thoughts have to be in accordance with these belief systems because someone's always listening, right? I think recovering from that and breaking that apart, which is very hard to do because it's like inside out and outside in. I think that has left, I will say, both of us uniquely primed to do the same thing with healthcare. So see the ones and zeros of the matrix, if you will, of like, okay, so everyone seems to think in medicine this is dogma, but I've been told in another setting that this was dogma. And I walked away from it and I survived. So like, what if we did the same thing with the dogmas in medicine, especially the ones that are really hurting us, like whatever the case may be, right? Like some dogmas that I know it's been useful for me to soften or shift is the notion that as a physician, I have to have all the answers and be the boss and be the expert in the room. The dogma about like what care can look like and what a successful patient encounter can look like. Like it has to look like the patient being cured of something or, like some things like that. And so I'm curious from your perspective, if you found it to be the same, like, are there dogmas that you've noticed inside of healthcare that either you've stepped away from or that you would love to shake up a bit?
Yeah, definitely. So a couple things came to mind when 10 years ago, so I did the 5-year FR program. And then when it came time to get a job, I was accepted at an academic center at University of Toronto that was very hard to get into at the time, as well as a community hospital. And so that was probably the first stepping stone to saying, like, I may just do it a different way, because I won't say which hospital it was or who it was, but I met with the chief of that department and they're like, if you take a community ER job, then you're just going to be a shift worker, they said to me, instead of having a career. And I went home. My husband's not in medicine. Thank goodness. I dated. We won't get into my dating. That's in my book, hopefully. Read my book and you can hear about all my dating disasters.
Ooh, sounds good.
That's not how I wanted the book to start, but whatever. It's fine. It's in there now. So I married a non-medical guy, which is helpful. I mean, I'm nothing against, I have so many good friends, and in other ways it's helpful. We won't get into that. I love to say controversial stuff I'm not even talking about. My non-medical husband was like, that sounds like such BS. Like, you did a Harvard fellowship, you did a 5-year residency, you have a master's, and then you're going to be a shift worker. Like, I'm sorry. But like, you can't just say that an emergency doctor. And it's also like, I'm still academic affiliated at this hospital. I'm at North York General Hospital, where we have Anton Hellman, who's actually one of the first, I don't know if you've seen his podcast.
No.
It's one of the most successful international medical podcasts. He works at North York General. It's called EM Update, or oh my gosh, EMK. Oh, I can't even know that. Hopefully he doesn't listen to this. It's okay. He's in a different sphere. I don't think he's going to listen. So he, I would say he's probably one of the most influential emergency physicians internationally. And he just went to like a community hospital. And also Arun Sayal, who does the casted course, is one of my colleagues.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And so they're all in it. They're at a community hospital, right? But the thing is, our requirements for our academic promotion. Now, hopefully U of T doesn't listen to this either, but it is a little easier than not easier, but they don't ask as many, you don't have as many like check this box to get so it was actually still hard for me to go from lecturer to assistant professor as an FR than as a family EM trained. I had to go and do an extra certification in quality assurance and improvement, equip, like a whole year extra on top of my residency so that I could go from lecturer to assistant professor. But all that to say, I was already willing to push the boundaries because I knew that I was a passionate person. I came to Toronto to do international health stuff. I worked with the Toronto Addis Ababa Academic Collaboration and helped start a point-of-care ultrasound fellowship in Ethiopia. So I knew that my passion for global health wasn't going anywhere. regardless of if I was at an academic institution or in a community setting. So it just, anyways, that kind of really set me, not, I don't want to say set me off, but it got me thinking like, a lot of these things we tell our trainees about the way they have to do things
Yes.
in order to ascend the ranks
Yep.
and I was dating a medical guy who was also in the military, and he said to me, before my husband, sorry, this is not at the same time.
An overlap.
My agent has his most successful book is called More, and it's about open marriage, but we won't talk about that. That's not for this podcast. Whatever. You can read it on Kindle so people don't see you reading it. But he said to me, medicine is more hierarchical than the military. And I thought that was fascinating when he said that to me.
Wow.
How could we be in a profession that's even more hierarchical than the military? So that was my early kind of thinking that, hey, that I think twigged my mind to think there may be some parallels between the fundamentalism I grew up with and the kind of dogma of medicine.
Yeah.
Then what happened for me was, I hate to bring up the pandemic word, but whatever. I read the pandemic word.
It happened.
Yeah. So then that happened. And I think a lot of us dug deep to say, like, okay, what is our purpose here in case, I know that not very many healthcare humans passed away from COVID, but because we did lose some to SARS at Mount Sinai in Toronto, I did think like, okay, maybe I'm going to die. So then, and my chief of Emerge, Paul Hannum, did pass away a few years ago, and he had just turned 50. So which to me now is young. Because that's my next milestone, right? Whenever it's your next milestone, you're like, that's young. So
it is young.
Yeah. And we had worked together on some ultrasound. He was an ultrasound person. And I remember one of our conversations, he said, I wish I'd written a philosophy book. And he told me that, and he shared that with me. And we have a plaque to him in our medical staff association office. So for some reason, I just saw his plaque and I was like, you know what, Paul, I am going to do my book. Like, you didn't get that opportunity. That was one of your life's goals. I'm going to make the time to do this. So sadly, I feel like these big events had to happen for me to take that leap to say, I'm going to carve out time for this. But it still feel very selfish because I had a lot of debt from all of the fancy stuff I did, like going overseas, whatever. And I had kids and a mortgage in Toronto. And I'm like, can I really spend time not working? Because that's what costs us. It's actually the cost of paying for the course it's still a cost to consider, but that opportunity cost, I think, we talk about the golden handcuffs, but it's that, if I'm not working, then I'm not working, working towards my retirement. So that was kind of something to get over, because I was like, well, if I were to just die though, would I care? If I hadn't done this thing. So I don't think it's easy to carve out time to do. Now, being in emergency medicine makes it easier. I really sympathize for people who they're very much at the mercy of the schedule of the hospital, because I was able to scale back my shifts. I literally had to just say, I am going to make less money. There was no way we'd be. People have asked me to how do you manage all these things? I'm like, I had to do less. And one of my female colleagues said to me, because I said, I think I can't remember what I said to her. I said, I always want to work at 80%, 90% capacity. And she said, I work 50% capacity with my shifts. She's farther along in the journey.
Yes.
And she's just this job takes so much of your emotional, physical bandwidth that, we are really, I don't want to say it's not overtaxing. We're just simply not allowing enough time for us to recover from all that we've experienced in our training and all that we continue to experience in helping patients. It's just, and especially for those of us that have others that depend on us in our personal life. I feel like still the vast majority of my time is spent caring for patients or caring for my children. That's still the vast majority of my time. The amount of time that I put into but the creativity is still not, as much as I would like. I feel like I could put into it, and so it's a process. I probably have gone too far. I've put a lot of time into trying to get my book published, and I still am in the process of finding a home for it. So, it's hard when there's not a linear, I think the medicine thing, like I was in school for 13 years. So doing something that's not like this is the exact time when, your album's going to come out or this book's going to come out. It's hard to be that flexible. We work in a system where it's like rigid, right? X, Y leads to Z. So allowing your mind to say like, oh, I'm going to do something and I don't know what the outcome is going to be.
The uncertainty of that.
Yeah.
Right?
That's why I respect for this podcast. I'm like, you're still doing it, right? Like, you're just like, we're doing this because we need to. There was something I was going to say that slipped my mind. I wanted to go into an artistic field like 20 years ago, but I was afraid of being poor because I grew up on welfare. And I was like, I knew that if, with a scientific career, it's like, 2 + 2 = 4 and this plus this equals a job. Whereas these other pursuits, like there's just no guarantee. And I think that's one of the things is, if you do therapy, there's no guarantee you're going to feel better. If you do this creative side hustle, there's definitely not in the world of like the influencers or whatever. Like there's zero guarantee that any of it's going to be like quote unquote successful in the way that we're used to experiencing success. Yeah. So I think really defining it around like it being something that's just like your soul work. And then if other people resonate with that, then fantastic. But if not, that's okay too. And that's kind of a hard thing to accept as a physician because you want everything you do, I think, in some level to be productive and have an outcome. Like it's like a science-based, like if there's nothing to show for it, not show, but it's like money or numerically, like we're I think there's somewhere in there we're tuned into a numeric outcome with the scientific training. And there's something else I wanted to say along with the numeric training. I can't remember. Maybe it's your time to interrupt me and ask something else.
It's a great point that I want to note because, like, I think you're speaking to, I don't know if it's the biggest dogma, but it is a major, major dogma that's not just in medicine, of course, but sort of across the world and our society, capitalism, but like the dogma of productivity. And that our worth is defined by how productive we are, and in a way where there's not like any kind of ceiling. Like if there's some way you could be more productive, that will always be better forever and ever. Amen. And that is like you just have to ascend to the ranks of productivity to infinity and beyond. And how horribly damaging that is to every person that has that internalized in them. Because what it means is exactly what you just named. Like in spite of that, you've been taking time to be creative. And one of the words that you use, which is the most common word that I heard and that I felt myself when I was carving out time to do this podcast and other things, is that it's selfish. And selfish equals, that's a sin. Like speaking in religious terms, like, and I felt like, I remember the first day that I had created space in my clinic schedule, which meant I blocked off appointments early. So, and I had run out of things to do. So I actually like left my clinic early and I was driving home and I'm like, I feel like I'm committing a sin or I'm going to be arrested. Like, because I could have done more with that day, right. But I had chosen not to for reasons that ultimately, like, according to my values and what my body has told me she needs, absolutely I believe in. But the old story and the old dogma of more is always superior, less means more. Lazy, selfish, like really harmful words that like we have not only ingested for ourselves, but then also you can see where like colleagues can and patients can kind of do that drive-by shame story of like, must be nice to have time, or like those like it exists that people are feeling like they have to prove their worth through doing and serving, and it can't be things for themselves. Like that's it's like altruistic productivity is the ultimate religious practice of medicine. Do you agree?
Oh, yes. Like there was 2 things you said that I was like, oh, I need to come back to this. Like, oh, yeah, the selfish being a sin, right? So there's that saying in the Bible, it's like, do unto others, right? As you would do unto yourself. So when I'm in the emerge, I think if somebody is waiting to be seen, then doing unto others is like seeing them as quickly as possible because they are waiting and they're in pain.
Yeah.
Or they feel nauseous or they're anxious and they've been waiting to eat until the doctor finally sees them. And so you're just like, for me, there's no way not to feel guilt for like my entire shift. Like I basically, I mean, I'm working on it, but
it's like, understandable though.
Yeah. Like, you're just like every single thing you choose to do other than seeing a patient is like the patients wait longer. Yeah. So, even just deciding like I can go pee is like a very small step, right? Or I can eat. Like I would say one colleague in our department who I highly respect, but he would make fun of people for eating before. Like not make fun of, but it's just like, well, I don't eat the whole shift, right? And like that's kind of it's funny, those kind of small cultural things that they're just little comments, but it's fascinating to me how if it's somebody who's influential and who's respected for being hardworking, when they make these comments, then you kind of think to yourself like, oh, I'm sitting to eat. Now, I have never sat to eat without actually also working at the same time. Like whenever I do eat, when I'm working, I am checking labs. I'm typing some of the chart if I'm not dictating because my mouth's like, so I'm charting, or I'm reviewing labs. Like I'd say other than peeing, there's absolutely no other time that I'm not doing patient care for the entire time I am there. And I understand why they call it the restroom. Like after you have kids or if you work emerge or a high stress, whatever, you're like, I get that whole restroom concept. Like
it's an oasis.
Like I'm just like, there's in another way, I'm like, there's nothing like going to pee when you're during a shift. Like I'm like, this is the best. Like for my
drink
whole
more water.
Shift. Yeah, I know I don't. I just drink too much coffee.
Or coffee.
Yeah. I went to we won't get into that. I went to this integrative MD and she gave me, and I got my all this stuff checked that I never would have. But because I'm like an outside of the box kind of person, I'm like, what the heck? This lady at my gym's like, go check it out. And I guess I have severe vitamin D deficiency, but I never would have. And I take vitamin D all winter long, whatever. I'm figuring it out. But that's what I'm saying is like, sometimes we need to be willing to admit we may be completely wrong. And that's probably one of the biggest things that I hope people take away or the parallels I'm trying to draw between. Now, I don't have honestly anything against like Pentecostalism. I actually still kind of wish I was because it was so, and I'm sometimes jealous when people are still in it. Like I'm like, I wish I was still in it, but I was willing to consider that I may be completely wrong. Yeah. That a whole bunch of people were going to hell. And I actually went on a missions trip to the Middle East. That's where I finally deconverted when I was like 17, 18. And I realized that the Muslim family I was staying with, they were so open-minded. And they were like, continue your religion. Like there's so few people without faith and spirituality in North America. And we're so happy for you with your like they were so open-minded.
Oh my God.
Then I was like, I need to be open-minded like them. And I think in medicine too, it's like, I remember when I was in med school, which was 15 or 20 years ago. It's my 15-year med school reunion. So I started med school 19 years ago. So 19 years ago, there was a complementary and alternative medicine club. And I remember thinking, I had already done a master's in public health and did this little stint at WHO. And I was so snobby in my mind. I was like, that is so, like, what are they doing? Is that evidence-based? Like, I had these kind of like, like, it's
the
not
stigma
evidence.
is still there.
Yeah,
for sure.
That's not evidence-based. Like, what do you know? And now, I mean, I'm always willing to consider that I could be wrong, or that when my patient tells me that like certain foods are bothering their joints, even though we don't have a test for that, they may be right. Or, maybe what they need is to do yoga. Like this is not the evidence-based podcast and we're not giving patient advice here, but I do think that I'm willing to consider that the way we are doing things may be wrong, or that there could be a revolution that proves that even some of the things that we're saying to patients, there may be new evidence that an RCT cannot prove, so that's where I hope that people can take that away. Like being creative or making time to have creative pursuits can also make you more open-minded and even potentially a better healthcare practitioner.
Yes.
I know that sounds bizarre, but like I used to never tell my patients about anything I had ever gone through because that would be akin to using them as your therapy. Like I remember hearing that in med school. Like you don't want to tell a patient like, oh, I've been depressed before, or, I went through this similar thing, because it's about them, and you don't want to use them as your therapy. So I totally agree with that. But since I've gone through this process of writing a book about my childhood and these cases, I have disclosed very carefully to certain patients where I think it would be helpful.
Yeah.
And I would say universally, they love connecting with you as a human. Like I don't find that, as long as it's not coming from a place where you're needing, the counseling. When you say like, I really struggle with this too, or people in my family, like that is, I think it's okay to bring some of that back into our practice, and then it makes your practice more fulfilling.
Yes.
Like it's less like, when you talk about the other human in the room, it's less just like, this patient is a lump of coal that I need to move in and out on a metric so that like we get them in and out as fast as possible. Like that's still, and even as I'm making it seem like I'm such a nice doctor, I still am like bowing down to the metrics. Like it's
Sure.
not.
It's all around you, especially in Emerge. Like it's tough to not, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I did write a recent thing on my Substack. I mean, it's just me like brainstorming out loud, but I do wonder with some of this AI, and I know that was one of your last episodes, if it can give us back more of that connection time with people.
Yeah.
I had my very first shift where I used it.
Oh my gosh.
It was kind of awkward. It was, just 2 days. It was kind of awkward because I was like consenting them to it.
Mm-hmm.
And then none of them objected, but like I don't want to say it was like, I don't think they really understood anyway. And I still don't feel like I understand the implications of what it means.
Yeah.
But I would say, like I was a touch more relaxed because I was like, okay, it was very attuned to specific details that I may have forgotten even.
Yeah.
So that gives me hope that we are willing, but I do feel like we get dragged along in these revolutions as opposed to being open-minded to them.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of just like, okay, now everybody is doing it. Are we finally going to get on board? Like that's kind of how I feel like the healthcare system goes.
Oh my gosh, it's so true. A bit of it, and I think like especially that last point, I think when you're talking about giving yourself permission, whatever it is, so it's like give yourself permission to be wrong. Give yourself permission to try new things, to be more open-minded, right? Like a core concept that needs to be involved in giving yourself permission is just acknowledging your own agency and that what you have power and control over, and also what you don't have power and control over. But knowing that you do have power to make decisions, even if the system is very constricting. And I do think because the healthcare system isn't very interested in our agency. I would say they would prefer that we just do what the system tells us to do, like see patients as quickly as possible. We're going to shame you with the metrics and put you, I don't know if on your Emerge, but I have heard there's Emerges where you're ranked by how fast you are and you know what I mean?
Even if it's not published, we all know. We all have it in our heads. Yeah.
And I have curiosity about that. I understand a certain amount of human behavior, psychology, motivation that they think is helping them there. But I think then what that can do, though, is when we get hyper-focused on trying to mold ourselves to a system that does not have our well-being in mind, that's when we forget our agency. And then that's when we feel like we get dragged along because we don't have the bandwidth to think for ourselves. And so what I hear that you have done, though, is find the spaces and the pockets for thinking for yourself, right? Like you can only have pared back your shifts, written a whole damn book, be in the process of trying to find a publisher. And plus everything else you do, I know, like singing and like all the wonderful things, like your other domestic violence, like you were just saying, like all these things. That is from still having that deeper knowledge of your own agency and your own power and saying, yes, the system may have judgments, or yes, society may have judgments about money or success, or even past versions of myself may have judgments because for survival reasons, we wanted to make sure we always had this for it to feel safe, whatever the things are, right? And I have choice here, and I'm going to give myself permission to do what feels like it is the next step in front of me to do.
100%. One thing I struggled with in giving myself permission, and I didn't want to talk about on the podcast, but I feel like it'd be helpful to others. So I'm going to just be really vulnerable. All I do now is be super vulnerable, so it's fine.
Yep.
One of the hardest things that I went through as a new staff was our 4 a.m. shift used to not be considered an overnight shift because we have like a 8 p.m. shift, a 9 p.m. shift, and a 10 p.m. shift, and a 4 a.m. So, and like staffing the overnights is really hard. Now, I have always been a night person in my mind. That's the sentence in my mind. I am a night person. Like I used to stay up all night to get papers done. I work emerge, blah, blah, blah. But then you have kids. And then I was working on this project in Ethiopia, and with the time zone, I was sometimes getting up earlier. And then I read books. I'm such a huge book. I mean, this is only I have so many books. I'm such a book reader. So I read the 4% Fix and these 5 a.m. club things. And so then I got in my mind, like, could I change the sentence in my head about being a night person and be a morning person and start that day like. So much of what we do is like in a rush and a rush and a rush. Like there's that scare.
Yeah.
I know these are such buzzwords now, like the scarcity thinking, but I still have major scarcity thinking. Like I'm just like, there's a limited amount of time. Get it done as fast as you can. See them as fast as you can because you're running out of time and there's more people and there's not enough time. And so, but that whole like centering yourself in the morning. Now I'm honestly not succeeding. I go through my waves of success with it. But when I am able to go to bed early, because it's nothing about getting up early. It's all about going to bed early.
Yeah.
When I'm able to go to bed early and get up early and then do have this like amazing morning routine that's like morning pages, which is a lot of what
morning pages.
Yeah. Like from the artist's way, like, I think that those Dawn Lim, I think she was on your podcast as well. Yes. She's somebody who started me on my creative journey, actually, when I worked at UHN as well and for a bit. And when she was my colleague there, I remember I wouldn't call myself a writer back then. But she's like, if you need to write to release things that are happening to you, then like you're a writer. So she's like, just call yourself a writer. And she's like, you need to write and release and give yourself permission to release those things because otherwise you continue to carry them. And that's something I hope people listening will take away is that giving yourself permission to be creative, to release the emotions of what we've experienced I think, in my opinion, should be part of our job.
Yes.
Because otherwise you're not really, so like if we just frame it as like, this is part of your job.
Yes.
Then it's like, oh, okay, well, this is part of my job. Well, then I got to do it. In the police force, I've heard from my police friends, like I feel like they have a weekly mandatory therapy or something like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
So
and we
work,
have nothing, right? They're just like, you need to do this because you're seeing some difficult stuff.
Yeah.
And like, this is just a necessary part of the job so you can be ready for the next one.
Yep.
Because otherwise, it's like you're still carrying that with you. And sorry, I lost the thread of what I was going to say initially. Giving myself permission to do anyways, so if you see it as like this is a part of the cycle of my job, then it becomes less of like an indulgence and more of a necessity and if this sounds pathological to say it's all about our productivity, but if you frame it as like, this is actually going to, in the long term, help my productivity and longevity. Yeah. Because, my husband would say to me, if you burn out of this field, then that's less money. So like, while it may be less money right now.
Love him.
Like, yeah, I know I should have him on here, all of his wisdom. But he's like, that's what's going to help the healthcare. He's like, as long as there's one more person who cares still in the emerge, that in the long game, that's better for the healthcare system that you scale back now so that you can be in the game in the long term, but I get it in your head. You're just like, but if I save more, if I work more now, then like compound interest in my retirement state, like, there's just a million things you can tell yourself. But if you're not showing up, as you're the best version of yourself, then eventually that comes through, right? And that's where we won't even get into like errors or medical legal stuff. I don't want to brag about this being like not having to have gone, but I'm sure it's coming. They're like 50% of us, it happens to them. So,
Congrats
how do we
on not so far.
I know.
For an emerge, that's major.
It's probably coming. They're going to listen to this podcast and be like, that was my doctor.
I'm going
Yeah.
to make sure she's got a mark on her.
Yes, it's true.
Okay.
No, I mean, I felt like a weirdo when I did the singing thing. Like I remember thinking to myself, oh my gosh, I hope my patients don't see me like singing in like leather on this like cover album. And then I realized like they're not really paying attention to what you're doing. If you're a family doctor, I could say maybe, but like in Emerge, they don't really even remember my name most of the time. I'm that unmemorable.
Yeah.
Thankfully. Hopefully
You're
it stays that way.
A few. Yeah. But even with that, well, I mean, that particular piece as a family doctor, and I know actually that there are some number of my patients who would listen to my podcast now, which is kind of cool. And hello, patients, if you're listening now. And at first that was like a fear, like the fear of being more vulnerable and being creative and like crying on a podcast. But the main thing underneath is like, what's your reason for doing it? Why is it worth it to have someone, think random sentences in their head and have feelings over there? And why would that still be worth it for me? And it's like, if like you're kind of saying like your reason for doing things is to ultimately benefit your own life and through that benefit other people's lives. Like the mantra I would say at the beginning is like, what saved me is going to save others. So me sharing this, I did do a little trick. It's actually like, I want to connect it back to a couple of things you said. So sometimes when you're just starting to give yourself permission, you do have to still hitch your wagon on a slightly inhuman shame-based story to even get out the door. So I will only sing because it's for charity and altruism is good. I will do a podcast because it will help other people. That is both my genuine reason why, but underneath also, I had a deep desire to express myself. I had a deep desire to take up more space, to be visible, to make an impact. But those feel like very self-serving, selfish reasons. And so I wouldn't think about those reasons. I would think about, it's sort of like the latter belief system. It's okay, what I want to say is like, it's okay whatever reason you have for giving yourself permission if it gets you started. You know?
Yes. Well, and I remember reading a book, after having kids about self-care. And they were like, people will tell you that it means going to the spa. But if you don't like that, that's not what your self-care is. So like, it may not be writing music, podcast, like whatever people who are listening to. And I think that's what it is tuning into yourself. I feel like most people know what they need to feel better to continue in their work as a physician or a healthcare human.
Yeah.
But we don't give it to ourselves because we're like, well, that's not what it's supposed to be exercise. Like I think that exercise, for example, is the one, what's the word? I can't think of that word. Pardoned, accepted. There's a better word.
Oh.
You know the word. Anyways.
I now think I'm probably thinking of the same word as you.
The word is gone, but
condone.
Condoned. It's the one. It's the one like leisure thing that's okay.
Yeah, it's acceptable. Yeah,
it's an acceptable leisure choice.
It's so virtuous in some way. I'll say that.
But there may be others. Like for example, I remember one of my female colleagues telling me like she's like I do video games, right? Like she doesn't want people to know, especially because she's like I just binge on video games. That's what I need to be ready. I'm like that's what you need. You do it. Like that's okay. Like no one else can figure out what that is for you, and that's what to me the core of the permission giving is no one can know what that is for you, but it takes time to really like of listening to yourself, and I think we don't make that space to kind of listen to hear about what is going to be the change that we need, and there was something else I wanted to say based on what you said, but it's gone now. Yeah. Gone.
Love it.
Oh, I know what I wanted to say. When I'm on submission for my book, and we won't talk about that process, but I had this editor, very senior editor that I really respect, say to me, like, it's not even like a doctor wrote this book. That's what I wanted to say on this thing, because I thought that was fascinating. And it was weird because I took
that?
I took it as a compliment because I was like, well, like I've been taking these writing classes for so long, and I've been working on deprogramming the way I write from being kind of scientific to more like poetic setting, like giving people a sensory experience, like the plot moving along, whatever. So like I took it as a compliment, but then I also thought that is because you brought up about your patients listening.
Yeah.
I thought that's fascinating that even society has this idea about a doctor not having emotions.
Yes. A doctor can be creative. That's a weird doctor.
Right? And also my agent, who's amazing, love my agent. when I first he first read my manuscript, he's like, "You don't cry anywhere in your entire book." And I was like, I did not notice that. And I'm like,
Wow.
I do cry, but that was just hit me so hard. It's fascinating to me that I was like, well, I can't let general society see me crying, even on the page, even when I was writing
in the mind's eye.
I edited out like this significant emotion that we all
Wow.
experience. Like 100% of people cry. Obviously, some of us cry more than others, but doctors don't cry like that. That somehow that came through with my writing. And so that's part of what I like how you're saying, oh, like my patients are listening. I'm like, it's good because putting up this front is not helpful either.
No.
Because part of why our healthcare system in Canada anyway is suffering is that we're putting kind of inhumane demands on humans.
Yep.
And so I think people understanding that is part of the crisis in our healthcare system is the lack of humanity that we experience with the working conditions. Even though I feel so privileged with the job and like I do think I have one of the best jobs at one of the best hospitals and like I love working there, but it's still like, even then it's still like my last shift, like I said, I'm like, I'm going to survive this shift. And I'm like, that shouldn't be, is that really how we want our people showing up for us when they're taking care of us?
Right.
Is that they just feel like they're crawling, like they're barely getting by. Like this can't be the right way that we deliver care. And I listened to another one of your podcasts, the one about the healthcare. See, I'm promoting all the other ones on this.
Please listen.
That's the way that's what you learned. I don't know anything about. Yeah, I'm just learning about these online spaces. But
so fun.
I liked that one where she talked about, was it Denmark? Anyways, it's always the Swedish
Denmark
countries.
and Netherlands. They're doing things differently over there.
Yeah, I love it. See, and when you started doing this podcast to say, I'm going to create the space, you don't even realize like the change that you're going to make by being open to embracing like your own passions, right?
Yes.
So it's so cool what you're doing. Like I love your podcast. Every single one. The best part about being on your podcast was it gave me the excuse to be like, because I'm a big music listener. Like most of my commute, I got to be honest, I haven't gotten on the podcast train yet. I'm going to. I have to with this. I have to with the authors thing. No, I mean it's now becoming more like a job, so that's bad. But I'm like, I need to. This is what I need to do for my side hustle. That's becoming more like a job.
Yeah, give yourself permission to not bring dogma to your side hustle.
That's true. I need that. This is my free coaching session with you. That's the other thing I came on here. I'm like, I'm going to get a free coaching with Joan. I need this.
Okay. Well, I will name then. I will give you one coaching pearl about the weight thing. The waiting, the do unto others and emerge.
Yeah.
And I say that as someone, I have felt the pressure of people waiting on me, but I have not felt the emergency room pressure, which I can imagine is a bit more, potentially could feel a bit more pervasive and people being extra grumpy. And like truly people have been waiting longer hours of time, right? The main thing that I say all the time and I remind myself of is like, this guilt isn't mine. Like the system is guilty of making these people wait. It's the system that is guilty, which is our collective responsibility. Because look at Denmark or wherever, we could be finding a way to design a system where people are seen when they need to be seen. My personal opinion is that probably some of these people could be seen elsewhere and then that would help.
Yes.
There could be more physicians and more allied health that could help. But it's not your personal guilt. And so if you like, you don't have to take it on as your personal pressure either. You can know that pacing yourself in Emerge actually is the way you can bring your best care to people irrespective of how long they've been waiting. Which I think you do already know. But I just wanted to say that as a pearl for all the Emerge docs out there.
It's great. And I realized I didn't finish what I was saying about this morning thing because I went on some other tangent. But
I mean,
I do say to myself, I have a mantra that sometimes I'm like, no matter how stressed I get about the waiting room or the wait times, the stress does not amount to me seeing more patients in a better way.
So wise. I love that.
But
the stress doesn't help at all.
No. So I kind of park that to the side and in a way it sounds harsh, but it's kind of like regardless of how many people there are, I will see the next most urgent thing first and then the next longest wait second. And it no matter how bad the conditions are, it is actually the same thing I am doing. So
Huge.
I'm like, why torture myself mentally? I mean, I still torture myself mentally like we do. But going back, I was going to say this thing. I really, when you don't, so coming out publicly about what happened to me as a child, well, like
Yeah.
I had kept that a secret for decades and it was so uncomfortable. Now it's been a couple months and so many people have reached out to me. It's been like, I'm so glad that I did it. I wasn't sure at the time. I was like, I don't want, is this kind of, like, now, so the thing I want to come out on this podcast about, so
Yeah, the
now I'm all about
vulnerable
speaking up,
thing.
giving yourself permission to speak up about like whatever happened to you that's most difficult is like
Yeah.
my mantra. That's what my YouTube channel or like the Substack stuff, like this is what I'm going for. Is as I don't think you need to share with everybody, but in the right spaces, I feel like it's the way to move forward. So one thing for me that was so hard at my work was like after my maternity leave, and then I was doing this thing in Ethiopia, I'm like, I want to become a morning person.
Right.
So I made this preference to have these 4 a.m. shifts. And it became a big thing in my group. It was actually one of the hardest things I've gone through professionally as a doctor is it was like a debate over whether or not this 4 a.m. shift was actually an overnight shift. So I had to go through the fire a bit to say like, this is a shift that's difficult to fill and I'm willing to do a lot of them. But the idea in emergency medicine, in my group anyway, at the time was like, we need equity. Like everybody needs to be getting the same.
There's like complicated point systems and stuff.
Yes. Or no,
right?
not equity. It's just like, we want everybody to get the same. Everybody should get the same number of 10 p.m.s, the same number of 10 a.m.s because we want equality.
Gotcha.
And so anyways, now the 4 a.m. is considered an overnight shift. But it wasn't ultimately like it was somebody else who came along after me. Like I kind of laid the groundwork to say maybe we should consider like a slightly more humane shift schedule where you could actually have kind of regular once you know how to work all the shifts. Like I agree when you're a newer grad, if you've never worked certain shifts, you don't know the pain points of that shift. And I think I get that for a group working together, we all need to have an understanding of the different dynamics of each shift. But once you've been at it for like 10, 15, 20 years, you're kind of like, could we actually just have a more regular schedule and emerge? And this is a huge point of contention, right? Like that's not the traditional way that emergency medicine is done.
Yeah.
And it's still, I'd say it's still like relatively controversial. There was a paper that came out in CGEM talking about how like shift work is associated with like increased cancer and all these terrible things, depression, all this stuff. I'm like, oh. Yeah. But actually, I think we have the solutions within us
Yes.
to address that. Like, I think we could, say, some people like these kind of shifts at this stage of their life when they're a new parent, when they're whatever, and we can just incentivize these other ones. And I think being creative about the healthcare system will make us better too.
Yeah.
Or make the system better. So that's why I'm all about now, like speaking up and I didn't want to bring this up just because I'm like, I don't want to throw like, talking about controversy at your workplace in a public setting like this, I think is kind of unpalatable. But at the same time, if we don't share, the realities of how like covering an emergency department is difficult and people have differing opinions that they're bringing to the table. And, that's okay for us to speak up about, maybe we could do it better. And that's how it's going to get better.
I love that example. Thank you for sharing it. I can't imagine how it could be viewed in a way that was shocking or controversial from my perspective, and that you weren't naming, you know what I mean? You were sharing your experience. You weren't naming names and throwing people under the bus. So to say my perception, and I, to sort of bring home like the thing we've been saying this entire hour, like this is an argument for creativity. Like this is why making space in your life to reconnect with the fact that you are a creative human being, not just a doctor, which we think means not creative. Like we need so much creativity to solve healthcare. Like, because we're so caught up in the dogmas and the rigid rules of like, we can't change it. It has to be this way. But the way that it has been is like literally driving people away from the profession. Like if we want to have people want to come into healthcare, like new grads and we want people to stay in healthcare, we need creativity. And I think we can get it without stepping away from work. But I don't understand how that could work based on like how our physiology anatomy works. Like we need to have a space in which we can actually sort of free form our creativity. And then when we bring it back to our work, we're connected with that our side of like I think that all of the writing you're doing, the singing you're doing, all of the creative work you're doing, someone may view it and say like none of that's connected with medicine. But I am sure there's a million ways in which it makes you more creative with your clinical decision making, with of course with how you connect and relate with patients for sure, and even conversations you may be having about ideas of how to make your workplace better. Like all of that comes from the same source. It's creativity, and we need that right now.
Yeah, I like that. All of it comes from the same source. I mean, I think we're all interested in and committed to doing the best for our patients.
Yeah.
And the shift is, can we still do the best for ourselves so that we have that energy to be the best for our patients? And I think being the best for ourselves, you know, a lot of people don't see themselves as like, I think creatively people think it means like you got to dance, you got to sing, or whatever. I'm like, no, it just means kind of stepping outside of the box and allowing yourself to have maybe free form thinking apart from the institutions that we're in. And I don't think it needs to be, you know, your creativity may just be like reading, or it may be, you know, being more social with different spheres. Like I had a friend who started doing like stand-up comedy, and you know, you just like there's I think there's that other side of our brain, you know, needs. I'm no neuroscientist. Like there's no, I wish I had an ambition that I would bring statistics onto your show, because you know,
this is a statistic-free zone.
but then it never happened. Like, because I know there's all this research. It's called, I've looked at this up before. It's called like BDNF, the brain nutritic. There's like when you're creative, like a certain hormone is released in your brain.
Wow.
So again, like it's like that ladder, right? So when I tell myself, you know, I'm helping myself like require, okay, don't take an SSRI, but I do take like, what's that? I do take a little bit of 5-HTP, whatever. I can't say that it's whatever does
it may
anything.
Be boosting a little something.
Yeah, and I take amino acid powder when I work out, but whatever. I'm like, if this is a natural way to get a hormone in my brain that my brain needs, you know, then it's like there's my scientific justification, right?
We'll
like by writing or doing these creative, there's also evidence that, you know, singing for 10 minutes can improve your mood. So I'm like, if these things help me to like not need to take pills, although I am a doctor who, you know, if you need the pills, you take the pills. I'm on medications for my ADHD, as I told you before, take the pills. But if I can do these things that help me to not require medicines, like because I'm natural, then that can also be a scientific justification for doing them, because I feel like we need that as a doctor. I'm like, this is the scientific justification for me being creative.
It's so funny because I literally will hear, like, you know, say like a coaching client or a colleague or something, and they have taken the step of doing something for themselves, and then they will say their reason, and then they're like, oh, and I know it should just be that I just want to do it to fit. Like, we could like literally shame ourselves and be perfectionistic about our reasons for doing things. It's so cute of us, but really, like, whatever gets you there to a space where you're enjoying your life. Period. That's like the end of the sentence. That's fabulous. Okay, I said I'd cut us off on an hour.
Yeah, I saw that. I noticed that too. You know what? My hour meter, I didn't set a timer, but like I just suddenly came
you could
to me.
feel it.
I was like, I think we've been talking for an hour.
So thank you so much for coming on, Anne. This has been so fun. You are a fun person.
Oh, I try. Yes. Yeah. And I hope people feel permission to reclaim their right to feel, to create, to exist outside of medicine.
Yes. So where can people find you?
Yeah, so if this resonated with you, if you're interested in reading my book when it comes out, or I have some speeches up on my YouTube channel about the private violence advocacy that I do, and I'm sharing survivor stories and allies and healthcare professionals. So if that interests you, please reach out. And as you know, I'm a huge advocate for creativity. So if you're interested in hearing like more content on that topic, please do join my list. It's like www.annaspler.com/join. That actually helps me get my book published. So you'd be doing me a huge favor, because the more people I have on my email list and following me, It helps me to actually sell my book. So I really appreciate that. And I do want to hear about like what resonated because I'm working on a second book now. So I'm learning that I need to connect more with the audience of people who may be interested in my work. And I'm new to figuring this out. So honestly, I really do want people, I know everybody says that on their thing, but like I actually really mean it.
I believe you.
Please connect with me. And honestly, Joan, it has been such a pleasure to chat with you.
For those listening, thanks for listening into this conversation. I hope you do, give yourself permission. What is it that you've been craving and yearning to give yourself even a tiny bit more permission to do it? Like in a tiny little way that feels like it shouldn't even count, but you haven't done it yet. Like what's one thing you could give permission to yourself to do like today? Let's go. Let's use the inspiration of this whole conversation we've just had.
Love it.
All right. Well,
I'm going to give myself permission to listen to more episodes of your podcast.
Yes. All right.
Yes. There you go.
Well, thanks as always for listening, and I'll talk to you guys next week. Bye.
Bye.
I would love to take this work deeper with you. Visit joanchanmd.com today and discover my growing menu of options for restorative medical education to suit your learning needs. I offer one-on-one coaching, customized workshops, and self-study courses that allow you to connect not only with my work on a deeper level, but also with other healthcare humans just like you. So if you want to start humanizing your work in healthcare to a deeper level and do it in community with others, please visit joanchanmd.com and find those options and what fits you and your life today.